Welcome to The Spirit of Business, episode number 72, an intuitive approach to business with Matt Murphy and Sarah McCrum.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Matt. I'm going to introduce another person into the conversation today. We've got Tracy McNeil with us, and I met Tracy last year because she actually started doing some work. She did a program of mine called Thank You Money, and she was looking at her relationship with money as the CEO of a business and as a former business owner as well. And I found her story really interesting. So Tracy, I wonder if we could start there and you could tell us a little bit about what made you probably have another look or have a look at your relationship with money in relation to the business that you're running.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be with you both. So I met Sarah's work through a coach of mine, and it was during, I want to say February, March of 2020. So really at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I had just closed a financing round for a couple of $1 million. So pretty great experience. And was just I was really in full tilt, beginning to work on all the things that I'd raised money for and thinking about raising the next round of money when the quarantine happened. And every CEO that I know was approached by their board and was asked to redo their business plan to make it possible to last 18 months. And I wasn't planning on lasting 18 months with $2 million. I had a lot of things I was trying to do. And I had a major concern about how to do that. And I think everybody, it's a very relatable problem that was going around at the time. And so someone said to me, money is not a pile of money isn't the pile that slowly runs out, right? It was this kind of how I was relating to it when I was trying to think about redoing my business plan to last 18 months. The point is money, she said, money is flow. And I thought, well, that sounds nice, but that's not how I'm currently thinking about it. But I was noticing, I had done enough inner work over the years to recognize fear and knowing that fear is not a place to act from, right? So I signed up for the course, and that was really, I wanted to shift from thinking about money as a pile that runs out to thinking of it as a flow and wondering where that road went.
Well, it's probably very obvious to ask you, where did the road go? Because it sounds like it went in a different way from perhaps the other CEOs. And perhaps you can fill us in a little bit on what you do as well as you go along.
Sure. Well, I'll start there. I'm a CEO of a medical device company. It's a women's health company. We have one product on the market focused on women who have pelvic pain. It's sometimes labeled vaginismus or dyspareunia. And it's very underdiagnosed, and we're trying to change the standard of care there. And our second product is a pipeline product that's in clinical trials, trying to prevent pelvic floor injury during childbirth. So, and I'm the CEO, and I didn't found the company. I took over from the founder. The board asked me to take over to take these products kind of to the market. And so I feel like I've had this incredible relationship with the company since I started. We got together and we raised money together, and then we hunkered down together, and now we've raised another round together. So that's the punchline. But let me know where you want to dig in.
Well, yes. What's changed from money as a pile? What's the story from money as a pile that could run out over the next 18 months until perhaps we can pop up again and make some more money or bring in some more money? What was the shift that you went through? What was the actual story that you can tell rather than that particular story that other people were telling?
Well, there's so much, right? Well, first of all, it's not about money. It's about energy and me and my consciousness. And so I think maybe one of the number one things I learned is and I've gotten better at, and I will continue to work on for the remainder of my life, is that other people plug into who I am and my energy. And if I show up contracted, concerned, shut down, then I create that all around me. It's contagious, and that influences. I mean, whether you believe in energy or not, I mean, definitely, it just is how it goes. But spending time being open to perceiving the energy, I thought it was fairly straightforward. It's very obvious that it's there when you pay attention to it, and so then shifting from looking at it, I do look at it in spreadsheets. It is grounded. And one of the things that I love about the work is it has to be grounded, eyes wide open. You're not going to pretend you have more money than you do. So there was never any shenanigans along those lines. But it became easier as I began working in myself and grounding and relaxing and opening to almost like the periphery. There were things that I don't have to figure it all out myself, but I have to show up my best and ask that, like, really learn to listen to my intuition and ask the questions. And there were so many layers of stuff I had to let go of in myself in order to be able to do that better. And I do it a lot better now than I did a year ago, for sure. It's hard to describe. I don't know if that makes any sense what I just said, but that's what I did.
I can understand it because I know some of what's in the, well, I know what's in the course because I created the course and I know the journey that I've had to go through. And at the same time, it's interesting listening to you because it's quite intangible. Matt, I'm sure you have something to.
This sounds so crazy, but I'll give you a concrete example. One of the things that I think a lot of CEOs struggle with who are raising money is, how much should I raise? How much money do I need? And what's the business plan that would match that? Or vice versa. You can go, it's iterative, right? And I really could come up with several different scenarios that I thought could be viable. And then I didn't know how to put that together. Like, well, how do I go out with several different scenarios and without sounding all wishy-washy? And there's this sort of fourth dimension that comes out of the work where you say, okay, I want this much or something better. And it's that or something better that I feel like opens the door to the things that I couldn't imagine. And what ended up happening is I spoke to an investor about the one thing I said I wanted, or something better. And he said, okay, but I'd like to see you raise more. So I started with the minimum, and then we ended up right in the middle, which, when I add to the first pile of money that I raised when I first got here, I get the 10 million that I thought I needed when I first joined the company. How crazy is that? But I
Those are
never
the
could have.
stories I love. Like, I so get it.
It's like to the penny, right? $10 million to the penny, raised in this crazy way. And it was a lot of hustle. For my next round, I'd really like to see it be smoother. It was a little bit fitful, but I'll own that. That was me learning how to drive this new truck.
There's so many things that you talk about, Tracy, that I resonate with and understand. And I've been in the world of capital raising with our clients, and we created a venture capital fund and crowdfunding platform and all these particular things. So I understand the plight of raising capital from somebody who is an investor and has investors want to invest into the business, as well as being on the business side of the fence in raising capital. And it's and all the things you speak about there is all the complexity that goes on. But I love the concept of, I would love this or something better. Okay, this is how much money I need or something better than that, and sort of moving up from that. And I really love that thought process. One of the questions I probably have for you is that, what's the feeling that you have now compared to what you had before when you speak about raising capital and money in the organization and this flow? What's the overriding feeling that you have? You spoke about fear to begin with. Where are you sort of currently at, and what journey are you on in relation to money?
That's a great question. I feel much more relaxed. One of the things that I have become aware of over the last year is all the places where I didn't trust that money would support me, and how that was so counterproductive. So counterproductive. It's the opposite, right? So I'm feeling a lot more relaxed that this next round will go a lot more smoothly. And I can just sort of feel that is how that will be. the learning edge I feel like I'm at right now is it's a little crunchy, and I'd love your thoughts on it. That we raised this round for use of funds to accomplish X, Y, and Z. In my mind, I say, or something better, right? But we didn't necessarily say or something better to the investors, right? So now I've got this team that is running full tilt, and they are rock stars. I'm so grateful because it's not just money, it's energy, it's people, it's resources, it's community. The same work attracted the most delicious, wonderful people to the team, not just our employees, but our partners and even our investors. You hear all these nightmare stories about the way people regard their investors, and that's just not our truth. Um, Also, I know that your investors are always happy when you make your numbers, and when you don't make your numbers, they're not happy, no matter how delightful they are. So I, I have in me a deep desire to hit the milestones, and I am a driven person. Want to hit the milestones, and I can feel the contraction around that. And I can see it in my team when we get that way. Well, how will we get this done by then? We have to get this done by then. And I love the sense of urgency because you can't teach that to people if they're checked out. But what I really want in this next maybe 6 to 12 months is to create more spaciousness and creativity and invite in easier ways of the or something better, this or something better, more and more.
It's interesting what you say there, and I think there's always this tension between pushing for a result and being driven to actually hit a milestone like you talk about. But then the other word you spoke about was the word trust. And so trust that something is actually going to happen, trust that the money's going to turn up, trust that you're able to achieve what you're going to achieve. So there's this flow that you talk about. And the tension that I feel a lot of the time in businesses is around when do you push and when do you trust? And I don't know if that sort of makes sense to you in relation to your experience.
I have thoughts on that. I'd love to hear from Sarah too, though. I mean, so I'll briefly respond, and I'd love to hear Sarah's thoughts. I definitely relate to it, that I resonate perfectly with what you're saying, and I'm seeing it. There's a guidance that the team needs. I'm still the leader. They're still plugging into me. There's a lot of new people, and in the old sort of 1970s, forming, storming, norming, and performing, the 4 phases of team, we're definitely storming. Not because people don't get along, but because we're just trying to figure out how to do this together now that we have the money. And I relate it to one of the modules on value creation. I really think it's kind of around value. Like, so they gave us the money, now we have to create the value, and it feels very quid pro quo. But I think it's bigger than that. I think it's better than that. And I feel like I want to tap into that more. But definitely the trust versus pushing is right there.
Well, you also mentioned the word contraction, and as you said that, I thought I have this ongoing discussion with Matt and other people because I personally find goals, especially financial goals, really difficult because they make me contract, and they don't seem to me to be set up the right way for my nature. Then I hear you and the team can contract around milestones because it needs to be this by then, and I'm thinking of Matt, who recently was doing budgets because it was year end, and so really setting the goals for the next year, and it's his most pressurized, unpleasant time of the year. So here we are, all contracting around this thing that apparently drives business, and all looking for the experience and experiencing it some of the time, experience of spaciousness, or for me, what I think of as just like a natural way of doing business. I have this deep understanding that I can't always operate on the surface. It comes gradually, but I have this deep understanding that business is actually natural. We're part of nature, and it's also part of nature, and therefore there's a natural way of doing it. And for some reason, it's really clear to me, and I'm sure it's clear to each of us, that there are certain types of goals, or there are certain types of things that we want to get done by a certain date, or we know we need to have done, where we just relish it, and it just feels like a really great challenge. And there are others that make us contract, and they bring up old fear, for sure, and often can actually really undermine performance. And I think that that's a very interesting thing for us to explore. I'd love to hear from both of you. If you have those two different experiences, the kind of goals or achievements that everyone really wants to make it, and that you pitch in 100%, and the ones where you try, it's something like in your heart that there's this contraction. It's like, oh, this is hard, and what are the ways that we can respond to that?
The thing I was just going to say, sorry, you go, Tracy.
You go first.
I was just going to say that what I also heard from you, Tracy, before about the awesome team that you have around you, and I think that the masses. Yes, you are the leader, and yes, you have to sort of lead the band into the right direction and those sorts of things. But when you have a team pulling around you that has a common goal and a common interest, and actually has a desire and leaning in and engage with the organisation and wanting to get there, I find that's such a great sort of catalyst to give you momentum, to be able to give you the confidence and the trust that we spoke about before. That's where I see this beautiful harmony of a business that's moving in the right direction. And that's what I could hear when you were talking, was this wonderful harmony between all stakeholders in the organisation and moving that particular direction, which makes life so much easier compared to the opposite to that, which is when it becomes a grind and hard, and there's limiting belief in, and it's just in you dragging rather than sort of walking with. And that's probably the thing that I find gives the most amount of confidence, and it means you have to push less, like we spoke about before, and encourage and lead more, I suppose, is the words that come to mind.
100%. I think for me, there was a real turning point when I can't remember the way the course gets you there, but there was a point at which in order to get to the or something better, I had to tap into something that was bigger than what we're trying to do, right? It's not, $1 million of revenue or something better, because I could feel it. Like, that wasn't the beautiful request, right? It was the beautiful request. Yeah. Feel it. And then when I got to it, it really opened this other portal to another dimension that I think I see over and over. When I can bring that to the team, they can tap into it too, without I don't have to explain it. But what we're really trying to do in the company, two things. We're trying to get these products to the patients that need them, because they're suffering there. And the other thing we're trying to do is show to investors, so that we can break the cycle of underinvestment in women's health, show investors that when we invest in women, we all win. And, when we were able to actually get there, like the whole energy space just opened up, and people love tapping into it, and they get energized. And, whenever I get confused, or when the team gets confused, and this is really how I steer, is taking that lens of looking at the decision we're trying to make today. What's a way we can make this decision that would serve those aims? And it just sort of because it's really not about these milestones. I know we're going to make some of our milestones this year, and we won't make other ones. I don't know which is which, right? But in the end, as long as we get these products to the patients that need them, and we show that when we invest in women, we all win, I don't care really how it goes, and neither should anybody else, right?
Yeah, that's exactly, time and time again, I think it's the same answer. It was very interesting, because I actually woke up this morning feeling really contracted around money, which happens from time to time, and it happened specifically because I saw that a promotion that I did looks likely to extremely fail. And it's just one of those it's just like one of those things where it's like, oh, for goodness sake, I've really, really tried hard. I've done all the right things. And it's like, and just that feeling. And I sat down and I relaxed and relaxed and relaxed. And I came out of it, and it was like, hold on a moment. What are you doing here, Sarah? You're helping people to shift their relationship with money. That's an extremely difficult thing to do, first of all, in a way. It's not that hard, but it's a big thing to take on because our views around money are so entrenched and money's such a big thing in our society. But that's actually what you want to do, and there's a reason for that. I was listening to Brené Brown and Russell Brand talking about politics and the fact that we have a spiritual crisis, and that it's only when people really get in touch with themselves and that we bring spirituality back into life in some way that's not divided up dogmatically into different religions, that we can make sense of what's going on in the world. And I listened to that, and it's like, oh, Sarah, you're doing the right thing. You're helping people to bring spirituality and money together. And I immediately felt exactly what you described, that sense of like, this is actually what it's about. And it's not even about counting the number of people then. It doesn't make a difference if it's 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. I mean, of course it does make a difference, but that's not the key anymore. The key is that people are creating change that is profoundly important for them. And who knows where that will go, because they talk to other people, we all influence each other. And so the whole dynamic shifts, and then all the other stuff, the financial stuff and the organizational stuff, becomes just a part of doing that. It's like a big reorientation. And I think it's so easy sometimes to get caught in the things that need to be done, and that's what I had done.
What I heard from both of you then is once again the word tension comes up around wanting to, like, we've got great purposes in our businesses and our collective business, and especially what I'm hearing for you, Tracy, in your business. And I suppose there's this desire to help and support and assist many people. And when you've got that great purpose and that great why, what you're trying to do is obviously help as many people as you possibly can. Same with your business, Sarah, is you're trying to support and help as many people as you possibly can. Same with mine. I want to help the business community as much as I can. We're very driven towards that, and that's a great common purpose. Now, the reality with that is that we have these expectations in our head of saying, well, I'd like to help 100,000, 1,000,000, 1,billion, whatever the number is, in terms of how many people we want to support in terms of that. And that drives our expectation. And when we don't achieve that expectation, we get disappointed. Now, we also link that back to the financial metrics and the numbers associated with business, like you're talking about before, because we have investors and we have, goals and targets that we actually have to achieve. So it does still create this, whether it's you're trying to satisfy an investor that, you've hit the milestones, or you're trying to satisfy your team and your own self around the purpose of hitting this particular target. It's so normal for us to feel what you said a minute ago, Sarah, a failure because we didn't achieve what we're ultimately trying to achieve. And I think it's important to talk about that aspect.
Yeah, I think so. But I think for me, the point is I now don't feel like a failure. I felt like a failure because I lost contact with the bigger picture. Now I feel like, I did a promotion that didn't work. It's like, that doesn't matter. Who cares? It really doesn't matter, because I can go and do another one. I can do something else. I can make a different decision. But to me, it matters. And I get that feeling of being a failure. And I was picking up something similar. Maybe, Tracy, you can talk about your experience. When I lose touch with the bigger picture of what we're about, when I see the bigger thing, it's like, oh my goodness, it's a tiny, tiny little story in something that's big journey, 10, 20, 30 years journey, and I'm just a little tiny part of it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I hear you both saying the same thing. There's this going in and out of the tension and the release, or this sort of pulsing of consciousness, really, in a way. It's those periods of contraction that help me wake up more. At the moment, what I'm noticing is that we're building a team that's spread out. So one of the things we learned in COVID is we can do that. And so there's a joy and a freedom in that, which I'm really enjoying. I think maybe spending more time enjoying that would be good. I'm thinking out loud, I'm getting an intuition. Like, I think I should be enjoying that part more than I have been consciously letting myself. Because what I've been really aware of is like the pinchy parts of it. how easy it is for people to fall off being on the same page, and how inefficient the communication is sometimes. So yeah, I'm curious how I'm seeing it come up as a team expansion, growing pain thing, right? So I'm curious how you see all that, because it can just, it's maybe not just a team growing pain, but as things grow, they change and you get new frontiers.
It's certainly a challenge, and it's something that I think that we'll be writing books about for a long time to come in terms of the social dynamics that's going on in organisations, and the connectivity. And my biggest concern and fear is two natural enemies to what you're talking about with a spread out team that's virtual, is the lack of social connection, of being physically present in a room with somebody, and secondly, natural absorption of knowledge, because when you sit in an environment, you hear what goes on around you. And so therefore you naturally learn, because you're learning from the people that are actually speaking around you that might be more senior or more educated on a particular topic. And so I think that there's going to be some really interesting things that we actually have to overcome. Great for flexibility, great for the fact that we get to work from, our environments without having to commute and those sorts of things. So wonderful things that we're obviously experiencing from this. But when you spoke about, coming back to an earlier point that you made about, you've got this wonderful team all moving in the right direction and pushing forward and that sort of stuff, and it feels great. It's the sustainability of that is going to, I think, be a really big thing for us all, to keep us moving in the right direction, given these challenges of being not physically present. So it's something that I think that we need to be, I suppose, conscious of. And that still comes back to achieving results, because if your team aren't sort of moving in the right direction, as you said before, therefore, are we able to achieve the milestones and the results and the ultimate things that we want to achieve for our business and our ultimate purpose? So I think that there is this connectivity between the people, as you say, the energy, the money, and how that whole flows together. And there's a natural rhythm. And going back to my earlier point, is where the natural rhythm is disrupted by us as leaders pushing or pulling in certain directions that maybe goes against that natural flow. Because I do believe that, I mean, the word cash flow, okay, we talk about doing a cash flow statement. The word cash flow is that it comes in and it goes out, okay? It doesn't come in. And I mean, the other opposite to cash flow is cash retention. Now, we obviously need cash retention in our organisations, which is the pile that you spoke about before, but only to the point to enable us to then go flow and do something else with that particular money. So that's why there's this nice sort of flow that goes on in cash and in money and in the organisation, as in and then the trust that underpins that. So it is a dynamic that I'm probably listening and pulling together from, based on what you've been speaking about, Tracy, and your experience, and also Sarah, what you've been saying. So I was still sort of caught up in this particular conundrum sometimes, and I often talk to Sarah about this whole concept of, do I push? Do I just let happen? Do I, I love the something better, but sometimes that feels a bit icky. And a bit sort of, so yeah, I just probably would love to your thoughts just from what I've just said then around all those things and how you manage that as a leader in your business.
Well, I think what I'm learning is that I'm learning to respond to my own inner state faster. So not letting it go on for days and weeks. Just if like Sarah was mentioning, when she woke up this morning, she felt this contraction, like, deal with it today, deal with it this morning before I go in. It doesn't take that long to really reset. And I'm learning also to ask questions based on, I guess it's almost like asking questions in the in-between spaces rather than the linear, Matt says A, Tracy says B, Sarah says C, what's D? It's more, Matt might ask A and I hear something in the tone. And and I ask a question, when you say A, tell me more about what you're thinking. Tell me what you're concerned about, and open the way to the real conversation, the real thing. And it may be that you totally scrap the agenda. I probably drive my team bananas because I don't always want to talk about the linearity often wastes an enormous amount of time when you're not asking the right question, right? Every answer feels wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I'm learning.
what other questions that you've found that you're asking more from a practical sense?
Asking me?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, so for example, we're trying to design a clinical trial to so one of the things I love about the US FDA is it was designed to protect consumers from greedy entrepreneurs who make claims about medical devices that are, snake oil. And I think they do a really great job. I'm a big fan of regulation in that regard. So just putting my bias out on the table. And it creates an enormous amount of work for everybody because you can't just say this thing will help you with your problem if you can't prove that it does in a scientifically validated way. So we're trying to design a clinical trial in this space where no one has ever done that before. And what I'm learning is that the way people design clinical studies is they look at other clinical studies that have been done in this space and they use that to power their study with the statistics, and there's nothing to draw from. We're literally the first ones. I can't believe it, but we are. And so it's creating a lot of really strange conversations where we're trying to do something that's really just not doable in the old ABC way. And so I'm beginning to ask questions, just almost like have you ever played Jenga? Where with the stack of blocks and you're trying to pull out the block that won't topple the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Sort
I
of,
have. Thank you.
yeah, it's sort of like pressing on the different blocks and see which ones can move. Like which ones of these are the ones that are stopping us, and just really being honest about the energy and not blaming the people that are sitting at the table. Like we're clearly a bunch of great people working on something that's not working. So asking, trying to come across as someone who is still very serious about achieving our goals or something better, but also really unmarried to the way we're currently doing this, and encouraging asking big questions like, what if we didn't do this? Hey, what if Matt, you and I aren't partners on this? Maybe Sarah and I go do this, like big questions. Or maybe this isn't the right study. Maybe we should find a different way to do this, rather than just grinding it down on the study that's not really coming together. And by doing that, I think we'll probably get a study that's going to work or something better. You know what I mean?
That is the beauty of the or something better, I think. It sounds almost so silly to keep saying or something better, but holding that openness, that's what I've seen, is that time and time again, or something better really can happen. If the thing can't happen, then something better can happen just by holding that openness. It's such a small, tiny little thing, and it makes such a big difference, because otherwise the thought is or something worse, or something compromised, or something less than what we really wanted. And so you're drawn towards this kind of disappointing conclusion, almost inevitably, because you just think about it more and more and more. So it's really interesting for me to hear you dropping it in all the way through the conversation.
And also I hear a sense of creativity, a strong sense of creativity in your organization, and that openness. Creativity and openness go together. If you're actually limited in your thoughts, then, and you talked about the pile of money at the start, which is a limited pile of money. So therefore there's not an openness to say that there's going to be an abundance. And similarly, when you're doing creativity, you're actually having to keep that openness as well. So I love the way the examples that you were just using then around this, creativity and sort of just asking the big questions, because that's the way that you're going to really get that momentum of that creativity. So yeah, that all makes sense. It all ties together nicely when you start to put the pieces together that we've been speaking about today.
Creativity is actually one of the values of our organization. we've done an exercise, and what we do is we start with our individual values, and we have a little simple exercise where people can narrow it down to just the 4 or 5 things. If you don't have those in your life, you're just not going to stay where you are. You'll go find them. And then we lay them out, and where they overlap became our company values. So rather than go into a conference room and think about what we should believe in, we found the things that we do all believe in. And it's interesting. There's a polarity in them that I hear you describing, Matt. One is accountability. We all feel really strongly that if we say, I will do this, then we really will. And then creativity is also one of our values. And it's literally, and we had to wring the towel about it because folks we're a bunch of engineers, and they didn't identify specifically as, sometimes technical people think of themselves as technical, not creative, because creative people are only artists or something. It's a weird stereotype that we have. And I was really challenging the team on it, that you'll drive yourself crazy with accountability if you don't give yourself the space to also be creative. So, I think the rubber meets the road with the annual milestones and the budget that I think, because you were talking about earlier, where you know in your heart, it's not going to go like that. Like, whatever you wrote down in the budget, it's the one thing it won't be, right? It'll be more or it'll be less. And and so it feels like a grand charade, right? So I think the through line has to be this polarity between accountability and creativity, and the finding of the thing that is really the beautiful request that's on the other side of whatever this budget was trying to get you at. And I know that probably the most difficult roles I've ever had were where that piece was not there. And I wasn't senior enough in the organization to help them get it. And there wasn't a through line, and there wasn't a purpose. There wasn't the thing that we could always anchor back into if we'd missed our milestone. There wasn't anything behind the milestone. And it was terribly difficult to retain people, attract people. People didn't like the culture. So I feel incredibly grateful to be at the helm of an organization that has this really deep, beautiful, wide purpose that so many millions of people resonate with, right off the top, protecting women.
And that's always the thing that I'm very strong about with an organisation, is to get the why, the purpose right, and then ensure that there's really strong values in the organisation that everybody becomes a custodian for. So, and it binds people together, and it provides a commonality around how people are going to behave in an organisation, which makes life so much easier for all of us. One of the questions I had for you as well is that, wearing the hats that you have to wear as a CEO of an organisation and talking to different people and different stakeholders. So when you're talking to the investors compared to talking to your team, do you find that you're talking a different language? You have to wear a different hat, or is it pretty seamless between the two?
That's a great question. I feel pretty integrated. I don't think I would be able to do it if I weren't. I think probably the hardest work of raising the money was getting to that level of belief within myself that this is the story, and it's the story for the employees, and it's the story for the patients, and it's the story for the doctors, and it's the story for the investors. And if you don't like the story, we can keep working on it, but really in the end, it came into focus in every little conversation I had with people, that it was actually in the reflection of myself and the sound bites that come back that created the narrative that I feel like I co-created with the being of the company, to be honest. I'm not sure I was the only person involved, but for sure I could say there were hundreds of people in the community that through all these conversations created the narrative, and it's the same. Yeah, I'm sure people do it differently though. I mean, this is my story, but I can't imagine doing it differently.
Which is great. And I think it's a great example of exactly what you're talking about. And the word integrated I think is the key. The word in what you're saying is that there has to be a commonality and integration between what you're saying all the way through, from whether you're talking to, sort of the newest employee, all the way through to the stakeholders and the doctors and all the people in your organisation. So that makes a huge amount of sense. So I think there's some great lessons. Do you feel that the work that you've done with Sarah around money has provided you with a result that you otherwise wouldn't have got if you hadn't have done that work?
Oh, completely. I mean, I can't say what would have happened without the work, but I can say for sure I can trace how the work was integrated into everything, from navigating the quarantine and managing the cash during that time to eventually, it was really just all of it. I mean, yeah, and it was, so we closed a $10 million round, right? And that's what I set out to do when I started the course. I knew I just needed help. I didn't feel like I needed help before the pandemic, but when the pandemic hit and I was hit with this challenge, I definitely felt ahead of my skis. Like I need some support in overcoming, and now I can say, looking back, and I don't know if you guys have seen the Bo Burnham Netflix, but you definitely should check it out. My kids brought it to my attention. We watched it last night. It's a beautiful performance piece on what the quarantine was for us. I can just see there was so much fear in just all around everywhere, that I think if there was one thing for sure the course helped me do was just let that be what it was, allow it all the space it needed, and also create another path, one of love and commitment and vision that was just enormously supportive for everybody. So it really wasn't just about the money, but it was definitely there. I mean, money's real and grounded, and it is now in the bank.
A good
So
place.
it sounds like life's easier for you today than it was potentially before.
It's so much easier, and it's so much more pleasant also. And there were adjacencies that had nothing to do with the business also, because it was just the same things we do at work, we do in our private life, and we pretend like we're different people at work and at home, but we're totally not. So parenting 4 teenagers during the quarantine. We had to move in the middle of the quarantine. We lost our home. My husband changed jobs twice during the quarantine. It's just an enormous amount of stress. And I would say some of my older patterns would be to try to control it all. And, the course really, it opens up with an entire month of relaxation, just learning how to relax. And it's not enough. You need more than that, right? It's what you learn is that you're never really there. There's always more. And that relaxing and grounding and centering and allowing other people to have their process and for things to be, I think I learned to intervene less in things that just kind of, it's like trying to intervene with the ocean. Like it's going to be the ocean, and getting a better sense of where my little surfboard is, right? I think for sure that there was a whole element there in my personal life that was huge. And I'd love any feedback from Sarah on that.
I just remember, I think that the first time you asked a question was you were about to move, weren't you? Yeah. And it was during the lockdown, and so it was a really challenging thing to do, actually, to move at that time. And I remember, all I remember from that is you coming back something just like a week later, and hearing that it had gone incredibly smoothly, and all the things that you had been worried about, of course, hadn't.
Yeah,
happened.
well, just to expand on that, what was happening was, and I know we all have this part of ourselves, the one that fears you're going to be a bag lady, right? Yes. You're going to lose it all on the street, right? It's this irrational bag lady in all of us. And bag lady was very upset about having to move and unclear how this was going to go. And she was driving the bus for sure. And I asked Sarah, saying, look, we had looked at so many houses, and some of them we got there, and there was a line of 25 people in front of us.
Wow.
Look at the house, and they all felt the ones that would barely do fell through, and other people got to them first or whatever, and we were already over our budget, and I was beside myself. And so I showed up at the Q&A session and I explained the situation in a minute to Sarah. And her advice was, I think you should just relax and enjoy looking at houses.
How'd that go for you? Did you get frustrated with that statement?
No, well, I was taking the course. And so it was, I listened to Sarah talk every day, right? So Sarah talks to me all the time. I don't get to talk to Sarah that much. but so I was like, okay, all right, and relax and enjoy looking at houses. She's just relax and enjoy looking at beautiful houses. So I was trying that on. And then my husband turns to me and says, I saw this this ad for this place that's up on the hill. It's a little over our price, which is like 5% more than we wanted to spend, but it's beautiful. And he said, let's just go look at it. I said, do you have an appointment? And he was like, no, let's just go look. Let's just go look through the fence. Like, let's just go look at it. And I said, okay, here's me trying to control less. Just say yes. It's the first rule of improv. Just say yes. Right. So I got in the car and we went up to this beautiful house, and it was really stunningly beautiful, really big. I don't know, 4,000 square feet, 2 acres, overlooking all the things, beautiful canyon views. It wasn't right. The foundation was off, and it fell through. But as we were driving away, there was this other one. He was like, oh, what's up there? I think I saw another one up there. And that one came through, and it's where we live now. And it's twice the size that we were looking for. It's stunning, beautiful, in our price range. There was enough space for all of us. And when I rewind the tape and pull out all the suffering and bag lady fears, we were being supported the whole way, right? And so trying to remember that more and more, that we're being supported, and we can just relax. And the more we can relax into it, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
And the tricky part is for the bag lady is that she can't see that. And sometimes then she misses the cues and she says, no, I'm not going to go and look at that house. Which is such a pity
Really
for
do.
the poor little bag lady, isn't it?
It's so true. And we really do create our own reality.
Yeah.
Whether you believe in energy or not, these decisions you make when you're in this kind of frame of mind. And so I'm trying that on now with all of this sort of whitewater rapids of the milestones that we've laid out for ourselves over the next year with the team. Just sort of remembering all the things that have gotten me here and trusting that I enjoy whitewater rafting, right? It's fun, right? It's a beautiful, interplay, like we were talking about earlier, of intention and relaxation. Swimming is the same way. If you get all cranked out in swimming, you're going to exhaust yourself. But if you can remember to relax, it's really a lovely, sort of sustainable thing.
And it's how cool is it to remember that business is actually for fun?
Say more about that, because I think that this is something that a lot of people do get lost in, and you see it a lot in your work, Sarah.
I do, and I can see it in myself as well. It's I can get too serious about it too. I grew up rather serious. I was always told I was too serious, but actually it doesn't make sense that we take it so seriously. Because what made me say that just now is I just had this flash of what would Tracy be doing if she wasn't doing this business? Okay, so maybe we could say, well, she'd be in another business or she'd have a job or whatever. But actually, if we just take the business piece out of it, because business is what we blame usually for, being the cause of all our problems, because we have to show up and we have to work hard and we have to meet these goals and all of that stuff. If we just took that out, what would we be doing? I think we would find other ways to contribute to each other and to do things together and to have projects. And as we did that, we'd start to say, well, we want to create value, or we want to work with those other people, so we need to exchange some value. And as we exchanged a little bit of value, we'd want to exchange more, and we'd create business all over again, because we'd be so bored and feel so purposeless if we didn't. And so to me, it's just important that we take away this whole notion that work is somehow bad. I think that that's actually one of the biggest problems, is that somewhere inside ourselves, and I've had arguments or like discussions with clients who cannot accept the fact that the word work could mean something that's good or enjoyable or fun. For them, work by definition is a bad thing. It's something they have to do against their will. And so for me, work is a beautiful thing, that's for sure. Whatever temporary, ups and downs, we all have our, like this morning I woke up feeling contracted. Work felt like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. I had those old fashioned kind of thoughts that we get. But actually work is a beautiful thing. And it's the way that we contribute. It's, in my view, along with whatever, your family constellation is and your community constellation is, these are where we get to express ourselves as human beings. That's where we express purpose, and where joy and freedom and peace and love and all those things that we really care about actually have meaning. They have a context. None of them mean anything if you're completely on your own. They mean something when we meet together and do stuff and create stuff. So yes, I would love to undevil work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you do that. I'm looking at both, and I realize this is an audio podcast, but both of you have beautiful paintings behind you. And I'm thinking also about art as something that I think we can learn from that. And we talk about this in the course of the constraints of the canvas being an important part of the beauty of the painting, right? If it's infinite, it's nothing, right?
That's right. And it's so easy to forget that. And yet it's only the constraints make the creativity. And the creativity makes the constraints, because you suddenly want to do something and you're not able to do it yet. You're not big enough yet, or you don't have the right people, and so you feel constrained. But then you grow, you find the people, you find what you need, and you can make it. So yeah, it's so much the process of life. Yes, beautiful. Very beautiful. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much. It's so nice. I just enjoy listening to this kind of, I can feel and hear the subtle play of what's really going on, which is so much more than what we typically talk about in business, and you demonstrate it really beautifully. So thank you for sharing that.
No, thank you, Kara. I appreciate that.
And thank you, Tracy. It's been a great conversation, and it's showcased and demonstrated so many wonderful things that have come out of this conversation. And it's a great flow. I think that's another great word that we've been using today, of the dynamic that goes on in business and the challenges that we have and how we face them and how we feel about them, and the underpinning energy that goes on as well. And I just think it's been a wonderful conversation, and really appreciate your contribution and the knowledge and experience that you have and the perspective you have too. So it's been wonderful. So thank you so much.
And Tracy, just before we go away, there may be many women listen to this actually needing your product. So just like hooked in, like, oh, that might be something there for me. What's the name of your business? Just tell us where they can find you and your products.
Yep, it's called Materna Medical, just like it sounds. And our product for pelvic floor dysfunction is Millie, Milli. And her website is milliforher.com. And stay tuned for more on our clinical stage product, but that's on our Materna Medical website.
Wonderful. I'll put it into the notes as well. So thank you very much. And,
that was my pleasure. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks. Bye.
You've been listening to The Spirit of Business with Matt Murphy and Sarah McCrum. If you'd like some insight into the spirit in which you do business, a great place to start is by looking at your relationship with money. Find out more by taking the Money Scorecard at moneyscorecard.app, and we'll be back next week.